Okay. Any questions by members? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Craig, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Members, if you would turn now, please, to agenda item number 10, State of Emergency Preparedness in the Delta. Ms. Messer, you're moving forward to take charge of the end, huh? Carl?
I am, and we might have to do a little musical chairs. We'll see.
Okay, well, you guys figure it out, and we'll have people here. There are also members at your desk. Is it 2 or 3 handouts? Well, now 4. Okay. We've just been given a status estate plan of flood control by Mr. Marino, the chief engineer, dated October 24, 2013. There are two copies of, I believe they're copies of slides from Flood Safe California. First is Delta Flood Emergency Response Facility Improvement Project. The second is Delta Flood Emergency Response Grant, both dated October 24, 2013. And these will also be on our website within 24 hours. Okay.
Okay, I think we
have
who
wants
this
to
figured
start?
out. So I will start very quickly.
Okay, make sure your mic is on there.
Okay, how's that?
Yep.
Okay. Move it a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead very quickly and do a few introductory remarks about this agenda item and introduce our speakers and say thank you to all of them for being here today and giving us some of their time. As you will recall, the Council adopted a resolution back in May of this year that had to do with the State Investments in Delta Levees project that we will be undertaking. And part of the resolution was that Council staff would come back before the Council at regular intervals and report on the progress of that project. And part of that discussion would be the agreement that we're in the process of completing with the Department of Water Resources. So that item is part of the agenda today and part of the presentations you will hear. What staff thought we would also do, since we have this venue, is to invite various speakers back from different state and federal agencies to come in and talk about different projects, activities that kind of fall under that levee, flood management, emergency response, preparedness umbrella. And I realized Carl and I were talking yesterday that several of the projects that you're going to hear updates on today, it's been almost exactly a year since we've heard from some of the speakers. So we'll have some new information, obviously, to present. And so what I think I'll do is maybe introduce all of our speakers, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
Okay.
Yep.
And somebody tell us what order we're going to address these issues, please.
Yes, I will do that. So I think I know we're all kind of jumbled up here right now, but so the order that this is going to go in, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Carl. So I'm going to hand it over to Carl Leszewski, our chief engineer at the council. And then next will be Dave Mraz from DWR, and he's the chief of Delta Levees and Environmental Engineering branch within the FESRO office. And then John Pash from DWR will go, chief of Regional Flood Preparation Section in the Division of Flood Management. And then I think Carl will speak. Is that correct? You'll have a segment of the presentations at that point. And then last but not least, we have Len Marino from the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. He is their chief engineer, and he will give his presentation at that point.
Closing down all those wine cellars built into the levees.
Okay, I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Carl.
Okay.
Bear with me here. I'm trying to figure out how this microphone works. Okay, I hear it.
Yeah.
Members of the council, thank you for this opportunity to discuss levee and flood management and those sorts of things. The first item is something that I've spent a lot of time on, and a matter that some of you are familiar with and interested in as well. Dave Mraz and I are going to talk about the study to prioritize state investments in levees and to figure out a reasonable cost allocation for paying for these things. Because it's an interagency agreement, we're both going to speak. I'm going to give council staff's interpretation of what's going on, or assessment of what's going on. As you know, Water Code Section 85306 directs the council to recommend priorities for state investments in Delta levees. And Delta Plan Recommendation RRR4 directs staff to develop these priorities by January 2015 and include the recommendation includes establishing cost share allocations or recommending cost share allocations. The study is needed to establish the value of these assets, the likelihood and consequences of levee failure. For example, potential loss of life, damage to property, and local, regional, and statewide economic impact. The study will determine state interests in maintaining the various Delta levees. We're also going to identify who else besides state interests are benefiting from flood protection provided by these levees and the value of the flood protection that is provided. And this will allow us to recommend cost share allocations as provided in the recommendation RRR4. Now, we recognize the Department of Water Resources is the biggest single repository of the data that will be needed for this study, so an interagency agreement with DWR made sense. We've been working with DWR since last April on this interagency agreement, and we discussed this in a staff report that we prepared for the August 2013 council meeting. The interagency agreement is finalized and it's working its way through the Department of Water Resources funding progress, as they will describe. Council staff has started working on developing the contracting documents that we'll need to secure consulting services for this study. We believe that we should be able to begin the actual work on it in the first quarter of calendar year 2014. Dave?
Thank you. Is this thing on? Yeah,
It is.
Okay, thanks.
You might want to pull it a little closer to you.
Thank you again. Chairman Eisenberg, council members, council staff, thank you for the opportunity, the invitation to talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to our hearts and see if we can't find a way to guarantee all things to all people for all time in the Delta.
Without increasing taxes or reducing spending.
That's our goal. We're going to talk a little bit about the interagency agreement, and the Department of Water Resources and council staff have been working for some months to fulfill the requirements of prioritizing, developing the methods to prioritize state investment in levees in the Delta. And to that end, we've developed a set of 3 tasks, and the tasks basically spell out the contract for services that the department is looking to the Delta Stewardship Council to provide back to us. This is something that we're both looking for, but in the contracting world we have to structure it that way. So there's deliverables that I'll talk about, timelines and other things that sound more like we're hiring you guys rather than working cooperatively with you. I view it as we are working cooperatively toward the same goal. Task 1 is to develop the methods, procedures, and facts for calculating the benefits which accrue to each island and tract in the Delta based on the level of flood protection and the apparent levee fragility that's contained in DREAMS. The DREAMS document gives us a great opportunity to use work that's been done before and avoid reproducing similar things. So I think it's a money savings option that we'll love to take advantage of. The analysis is going to start with a spreadsheet that details all of the islands and tracks in the Delta and lays out all of the assets that are on each of those islands.
Are you going to be updating the old DREAMS Delta Risk Management Study, island by island statistic on population, their activities on land, property value, that kind of stuff?
Not to update the island or the DREAMS study itself, but the spreadsheet that you have as a part of your framework document, I think it's Appendix D, started with that, and it's as current as we could make it. There have been a couple of changes from the DREAMS study. So that updated spreadsheet is going to be the genesis of where we take off from. So we won't actually take off from the inventory that's in DREAMS. It's going to be this spreadsheet that we provide.
A request, and I'm not sure where it fits into this discussion, but since the investment strategy study that we're required by statute to do is focusing on just that, investment strategies, could you give us, not now, but in writing at some point in the near future, kind of an overview summary of the cost sharing ratios that apply elsewhere in California for flood control, emergency response programs, and so on, and contrast that with what might exist within the statutory delta or the Suisun Marsh? I mean, I just want to get an understanding of a statewide picture, because this is a statewide investment strategy that we're called upon to produce. And I understand those things change periodically, but I don't recall seeing any definitive thing on that recently.
Yeah, I'll have to work with staff a little bit to
That'd be great.
make sure that I understand exactly where we need to go and then produce the
that's
a
fine.
response to.
Thank you.
The report resulting from Task 1 is going to detail the methods, the assumptions, the models, and processes along with any findings for a peer review. And that peer review will be overseen by the council and undertaken as a part of your science program. And that peer review is going to assure that the methods that are proposed are reasonable, usable, supportable. With the peer review complete, then we move into Task 2. And Task 2 is to use the data that's been approved and reviewed, use the methods developed in Task 1 to establish a tiered ranking of all islands and tracks in the Delta as to their priority. Now, we expect that there will be at least 3 categories, high, medium, and low, and that within those categories there will be some means of distinguishing between which is the highest of the high and the lowest of the high, and break it on down that way. That's up to the council to determine, and the Department of Water Resources expects to participate in that, and between the two of us and perhaps even the Delta Protection Commission, we'll come to a conclusion. Also with Task 2, there's going to be a calculation of potential assessments that are attributable to each one of the beneficiaries that receive benefit from the Delta. So it could potentially result in an organization in Southern California being assessed for the benefit that they receive from the Delta levee system. The third task is preparation and implementation of a quality control plan that will make sure that the tasks 1 and 2 are properly carried out. With respect to a timeline for when all of this is going to come about, we've taken a look at each one of the steps that we have to go through. I think there was a mention that the project or the program, the process is complete. The process for understanding between the Stewardship Council staff and the Department of Water Resources staff is complete. We've developed a scope of work from what began as lists and concepts. We've broken that down into products and deliverables. We've changed that into a scope of work that's being developed by our Contract Services Office. It goes from the Contract Services Office to the Office of Chief Counsel. They take about 15 days to make an approval. Then it goes to I've got a cheat here now. It goes to the Delta Stewardship Council for signature, and we're hoping that it'll take a minimal amount of time. I'm suspecting that your attorneys are going to want to spend a little bit of time reviewing the document and making sure that it meets all of your expectations and that you can actually comply with it. So we've left between 20 and 60 days for that to occur. From there, it'll come back into the Department of Water Resources, be signed by my chief, and since we are the originators of that agreement, we think it'll go pretty fast. We've left only 5 days. Then it goes to the Department of General Services. General Services will take between 20 and 30 days to process it. And with that, if the timeline holds, we're looking at a January 31 to March 28 for actual execution of when the money would be available to the council to actually prosecute the work. I think at this point, the council knows what's in the agreement, or council staff knows what's in the agreement. They've got assurances that a level of funding will be there, and I believe that you can be working on a consultant contract if that's the way that you choose to pursue the work, or making staff assignments, doing whatever is necessary to get the work going. So I think that pretty much ends the discussion on the interagency agreement, and if you have questions or comments, I'd be happy to address them.
Any questions on that? Nope. Okay.
Okay.
Next subject.
Great. Next one. The next subject is the framework for investment in integrated flood management within the Delta. As part of the development of the Delta Plan, DWR put forth a draft document that talked about the importance, the interests, the state investment in Delta levees. And we gave you that quite early on in the process, and I believe that has been incorporated into your Delta Plan and actually is a part of your policy.
Right.
So we are now finalizing the framework, and we are going to go out to the public and offer them the opportunity to read through it in its entirety, make comments, and perhaps make some adjustments into the framework. The framework document itself discusses the importance of the Delta, types of work that are necessary to continue receiving state benefits, talks about the determination of values, roles and strategies for investment, and guiding principles. The guiding principles are to take a look at state law, make sure that we're in compliance. We're to focus on getting multi-benefit projects and to preserve the opportunities for other planning efforts that go on within the Delta itself. We're also going to look at what gives the highest benefit to the state. In some cases, that'll be preserving a levee in place and helping to make sure that the island remains unflooded. In other cases, it might be developing a setback levee or contributing to an ecosystem restoration project. We also will talk about publishing state priorities on a regular basis, the cost share that we will expect from other beneficiaries, and then the ability to execute the work using a public-private partnership. So with all of that stated, the framework develops a set of 3 beneficiary categories. First one is localized projects. Second one is generalized. And the third one is ecosystem conservation. And within each of those, we have three priorities: high, medium, and low. And when you look at the table that contains those priorities and you compare it to the table that's in your RRP-1, they're very similar. There are some minor differences in terminology. That's the result of the review processes that have gone on and the comments that we've received. I believe that the minor differences that do exist are not significant. They can be accommodated with interpretation, and when we publish those guidelines for doing levy projects. So I think all in all, it's not a surprising document. It's basically confirmation of what we had given you more than a year ago. And once we get our public comments in and make, again, I expect them to be minor adjustments, we will take the document, present it to DWR executive, and have it become part of the policy that the department uses to do the right things in the Delta. The draft that we have out now contains the framework as the primary document. It contains a statement of missions and goals. That's an Appendix A. There's a graphic or a set of graphics and discussion about performance standards that have been used in the Delta and we expect to be used. There is a final copy of the background and reference memorandum that states many of the concerns in the Delta, many of our goals and objectives. And then there is the Delta Island spreadsheet that I referred to earlier that's going to be a part of developing the interagency agreement. I think that's pretty much everything that I have. And the document is on our website for public release. We'll talk again about it at our Delta Levees and Habitat Advisory Committee meeting, and we will take the comments as they come in and see what happens. Thank you.
Dave, I want to thank you for that. First of all, it's good news that we're very close in both terminology, and we're almost identical in approach and close in terminology, and it's essential, I think, to clean up terminology to avoid future misunderstanding, and I thank you for that a lot. A couple of things occur to me. This process, your framework, our state investment study, all of these things, if we keep the timetable we're talking about, these are recommendations, and your information, our recommendations, the department's policy positions are all going to be available prior to the decision-making time on a final Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Now, I make a caveat. I am keenly aware that neither BDCP nor the department is claiming, asserting, or acceding to the conclusion that all levees within the Delta or the Suisun Marsh are somehow related to the project. Right. And I'm also keenly aware that our statute said one of our functions was not to expand state financial liability in a willy-nilly fashion, which given the Paterno case, is pretty damn important.
Yes.
But I wonder whether this isn't part of an effort that at some point is going to allow all these participants, and the same people seem to operate in all these different policy arenas simultaneously, to have a more intelligent discussion about levies, the future, the responsibility, the land use associated with it, and so on. And I mean, it's painfully slow, but it's really important, and this seems to me to be pretty good foundational information.
I believe that's true. I think the DREAMS study set a kind of a baseline. It gave us a lot of information on a lot of different fronts that can be used to further other efforts. I think the spreadsheet that you have in the packet is another attempt at characterizing those features in the Delta that we all know and love and need to make some decisions about. I think the interagency agreement that where we're going to develop the methods to prioritize state investment. There's going to be a lot of public interaction, a lot of discussion about who benefits and how much, but I think that's something that's been long overdue. And I envy you your position to be able to sit and talk and sort all that out. It's going to be really interesting to watch.
I won't hold you to the word envy. There must be other thoughts passing through your mind.
Perhaps. At the end of the day, that discussion is going to be very fruitful. The way that the framework is structured and the tables that we've got, both the table 1 from the framework and our RP1 that is in the plan, I think facilitates a variety of needs and wants from the Department of Water Resources as a funding agency, the reclamation districts as the recipient of those funds and of the with a primary interest in maintaining those levees, to the water contractors who derive benefit from water quality, water supply conveyance. There are just so many things coming together in this effort. It's going to be challenging, interesting, and I think timely.
Randy.
Dave, as you know, our planning horizon is an 87-year planning horizon.
Sure.
And in that amount of time, the legislature has told us to prepare for a 55-inch sea level rise.
Yes.
Is that part of the framework, the levee prioritization plan?
While not specifically stated, the framework will accommodate the sea level rise. One of the things that you'll notice as you go through the appendices, the levee structures are targeted to a 100-year flood level. So as that 100-year water surface goes up, the levee crest has to go up to keep pace with it. One of the ways that we're attempting to handle sea level rise and climate change impacts is by periodically redoing the hydrologic analysis. And as those changes occur, it'll call for changes in the levee system in order to maintain that freeboard that's shown on the standards. So I think we're in a good position to be able to accommodate that occurrence.
I'm not sure if you told me yes or no.
I told you not specifically yes, but we can accommodate the rise in sea level by using the framework the way that it is.
All right. It just occurs to me that if our marching orders are to prepare for a 55-inch sea level rise, whatever cooperative effort we do with other state agencies ought to have that as the goal.
Yeah. I believe that's the same target that the Department of Water Resources uses as our expected sea level rise within the next 100 years. So while it's not specifically stated in the framework document, it's kind of inherent in what it is that we do.
There have been scientific expressions of the need to redo the landscape and create more shallow water habitat and so on, which suggests that there are islands currently protected by levees that may in the future may no longer require a levee. So I presume a long-term view of the changes that science is telling us may occur as part of the framework?
Much the same as sea level rise, where there are changes that are commonly agreed upon to take a levee out and allow the land to flood, which is Prospect Island, Liberty Island. The framework and the table that we were discussing will accommodate that also. It really depends on how the guidelines for making grant funds available use the framework to provide an incentive to owners to do the work that we're looking for. So devil's in the details again is the way that it finally works.
My final question has to do with transportation corridors. There was, I don't think it's explicitly stated in the Delta Plan, but we received input during our planning process that it might be wise to consolidate utilities and transportation corridors along the Highway 4 corridor or Highway 12 corridor. Would suggest that given a 55-inch sea level rise, there's probably some elevation work that needs to occur. Is that a part of the framework?
Again, not specifically, but depending upon how the planning efforts go and the state decides to target its funds to a particular effort, as long as those efforts involve raising levies, the framework will accommodate that.
So I'm gathering that this isn't a master plan to take us to the year 2100. It's an incremental look at maybe the next 10 years and what we think we might be able to afford to get through some shorter period of time than to the end of the century.
Yeah. Certainly not a master plan to detail out how the levy or how the delta is going to look in the next 100 years. I think it's more a flexible framework that allows the planning processes that are ongoing now to come to completion with specific recommendations that then could be implemented by using the table that we've produced in the document. So it allows an awful lot of latitude to do things like raising levies, setting back levies, taking levies out, improve certain corridors for various reasons, whether it's water supply or whether it's transportation or whether it's navigation. So it facilitates a lot of things, but it doesn't specify this has to be done or that has to be done.
Mr. Damrell, did you have a question? No. Okay. All right.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Carl?
Thank you.